Everyone wants to wake up. They meditate, read the books, attend the retreats, chase the breakthroughs. But Carl Jung discovered something that most spiritual seekers never want to hear. Awakening has a price, and it's not discipline or practice or devotion. The price is loss. You have been sold a comforting lie by a modern spiritual marketplace that treats enlightenment as an acquisition, a shiny new accessory to add to your already cluttered ego, a promise of eternal bliss, unbroken peace, and radiant light. But the clinical reality of individuation, the actual process of becoming who you truly are, is a grueling, terrifying descent into the darkest, most unexamined corners of your own psyche. It is not an ascent into the heavens. It is a devastating plunge into the underworld of your own unconscious material. True awakening is fundamentally an act of destruction. It is a systematic dismantling of the false self, a violent stripping away of every illusion, every comfort, and every psychological crutch you have ever relied upon to navigate your existence. The ego-centered consciousness clings desperately to its constructed reality, terrified of the unraveling that must inevitably occur if you seek the truth. To truly awaken is to invite a psychological vertigo that shatters the very foundation of your world, leaving you disoriented, gasping for breath, and entirely stripped of your defenses. You must willingly surrender the comforting illusions that have served as your psychological oxygen for decades. This brings us to the first agonizing toll you must pay on this journey, the complete and utter loss of your narrative identity. From the earliest moments of your childhood, you have meticulously woven a complex, intricate story about who you are. You have cast yourself as the tragic victim of your circumstances, the resilient hero of your relentless struggles, the misunderstood genius surrounded by mediocrity, or the selfless martyr sacrificing everything for the ungrateful masses. This story is your prison. It dictates your every reaction, filters your every relationship, and enforces your every limitation. Carl Jung understood deeply that this narrative is largely a defense mechanism, an elaborate shield forged to protect you against the terrifying raw chaos of the unconscious. When you step onto the true path of genuine awakening, this cherished story begins to dismantle. You realize with a sickening, unavoidable clarity that your treasured identity is merely a fragile collection of conditioned responses, inherited beliefs, and desperate coping mechanisms. The loss of this narrative is not a gentle transition. It is akin to a profound psychological death. You will wake up one morning and look in the mirror, and you will no longer know who is looking back at you. The comforting script you have recited to yourself for years will suddenly sound hollow, flat, and absurd, leaving you entirely adrift in a vast sea of terrifying ambiguity. You will feel an overwhelming, suffocating grief for the character you once played, mourning the agonizing loss of a self that never truly existed in the first place. This is not a peaceful release. It is a violent tearing away of the fabric of your perceived reality, leaving you naked and shivering in the cold light of truth. And as the overarching narrative collapses into dust, it exposes the next devastating cost you must bear, the loss of your resentments as fuel. For most of your life, whether you admitted it or not, anger, bitterness, and perceived injustices have been the silent, roaring engines driving your ambitions. You wanted to prove them wrong, to show the world your undeniable worth, to rise triumphantly above those who ignored, belittled, or hurt you. This compensatory motivation is deeply and stubbornly embedded in the self-centered consciousness. But awakening demands the total, uncompromising withdrawal of these psychological projections. You can no longer blame your parents for your neuroses. You can no longer blame your ex-partners for your heartbreak. You can no longer blame society for your failures, and you can no longer blame the universe for your internal state of agonizing emptiness. Jung warned his patients that withdrawing projections is one of the most painful moral tasks a human being can ever undertake, precisely because it forces you to look inward at the terrifying darkness you have constantly, conveniently assigned to others. When you finally release these resentments, you lose the fiery, toxic fuel that has propelled you forward for your entire adult life. Suddenly, the burning desire to achieve, to conquer, to be validated by the external world evaporates into thin air. You are left standing alone in the smoldering ashes of your old, ego-driven ambitions, facing a profound, echoing emptiness. Why do you do anything at all if not to compensate for your deep-seated, agonizing feelings of inadequacy? The silence that follows this terrifying realization is absolutely deafening. You will feel entirely drained, utterly unmotivated, and completely stripped of the fierce defensive energy that once kept you feeling safe and purposeful. This leads inextricably to the third price, which is perhaps the most outwardly painful and socially devastating: the loss of social belonging. As your internal psychological landscape undergoes this massive seismic shift, your external world will inevitably and ruthlessly mirror the fracture. The people you once resonated with seamlessly, the friends who knew and loved the old, compliant you, the family members who relied heavily on your predictable dysfunctions to maintain their own comfort, will begin to feel like absolute strangers. They will sense, with the acute intuition of the herd, that you are changing, that you are mutating, that you are no longer playing by the unspoken, rigid rules of the tribe. You will find yourself utterly unable to participate in the shallow conversations, the petty gossip, the mutual complaining, and the superficial distractions that bind so many human relationships together. Your newfound raw authenticity will act as a glaring, unforgiving mirror, reflecting their own unexamined, unconscious material back to them, and they will resent you deeply for it. You will experience a profound, aching, bone-deep loneliness. The herd will reject you, ostracize you, or simply drift away, and you must willingly walk into the barren wilderness of absolute isolation. Jung knew that the path to the true, authentic self is always a solitary one. You cannot take your comforting crowd with you into the depths. You will spend countless nights alone, staring blankly at the ceiling, feeling the crushing weight of your solitude, wondering desperately if you have made a terrible, irreversible mistake, wondering if the sheer madness of this isolation is truly worth the elusive prize of your soul. You will crave, with every fiber of your being, the warm, numb, mindless comfort of fitting in again, but you will know in your bones that to return to the herd would be a fatal betrayal of your own hard-won integrity. And just as you think the isolation is the absolute worst of the suffering, you must pay the fourth, deeply disorienting price: the loss of epistemological certainty. You used to know exactly what was right and what was wrong, what was good and what was evil, what was true and what was false. You had a neat, tidy, perfectly categorized worldview that kept the terrifying chaos of existence at bay. Awakening ruthlessly dismantles all of it. You begin to see, with a terrifying clarity, the absolute relativity of your deepest, most cherished convictions. The dogmas you clung to like a drowning person clinging to a raft, whether they were religious, scientific, political, or philosophical, are suddenly revealed as mere human constructs, fragile, desperate attempts by the terrified mind to control the inherently uncontrollable universe. You are plunged violently into a sustained state of not knowing. This is not a peaceful, Zen-like surrender. It is a terrifying, stomach-dropping free fall into the abyss. You will severely question your own sanity. You will doubt every major decision you have ever made in your life. The solid ground beneath your feet will simply vanish, and you will have to learn, through agonizing trial and error, to tolerate the unbearable tension of opposites without rushing frantically to resolve them into easy, comforting conclusions. It is precisely in this agonizing liminal space of total uncertainty that profound psychological transformation actually occurs, but the daily journey through that space is fraught with relentless despair and cognitive dissonance. To navigate this terrifying void without losing your mind completely, you need a structured framework that respects the immense gravity of the psychological descent. Our guide, True Self-Discovery, offers 24 reflection exercises rooted in Jung's teachings, designed not to give you easy answers, but to help you sit with the hard questions that real awakening demands. The link is below if you're ready for that kind of work. Because if you boldly choose to continue past this point of no return, you must face the fifth and undeniably most harrowing price of all, the loss of your private, cherished self-image through the excruciating, agonizing process of shadow integration. You have spent your entire life, since you were a small child, meticulously cultivating a persona, a carefully crafted mask of goodness, competence, reliability, and morality that you present to the judgmental world, and far more importantly, to yourself. You genuinely believe, deep down, that you are fundamentally a decent, well-meaning person. But Carl Jung taught that the shadow contains absolutely all the aspects of yourself that you have violently repressed, aggressively denied, and deemed completely unacceptable to society and to your ego. Awakening forces you, against your will, to drag these hidden, terrifying monsters out of the dark basement of your psyche and into the blinding light of consciousness. You will have to look directly at your own boundless capacity for cruelty. You will have to confront your hidden, pervasive selfishness. You will have to face your pathetic, embarrassing cowardice. You will have to own your manipulative, calculating tendencies. And you will have to accept your darkest, most shameful, socially abhorrent desires. This is not a polite theoretical exercise to be done on a meditation cushion. It is a visceral, nauseating, profoundly disturbing encounter with the ugliest, most depraved parts of your own soul. You will see with devastating clarity exactly how you have hurt others throughout your life, not out of noble intentions or innocent mistakes, but out of petty vindictiveness, unacknowledged jealousy, and blind, raging ego. The pristine, beautiful image of yourself that you have protected for decades will shatter into 1,000 irrecoverable pieces on the floor of your consciousness. The emotional pain of this realization is physically staggering. You will feel a deep, soul-crushing guilt and a humiliation so profound and absolute that it will literally bring you to your knees in weeping despair. You will realize that you are not the saint you thought you were. You are fully capable of the very atrocities and cruelties that you so loudly condemn in other people. Accepting this vile darkness as your own, without deflecting, without making excuses, without rationalizing, requires a superhuman, almost impossible level of brutal honesty. It is a literal psychological crucifixion. You must willingly let the false, good, innocent self die a painful death so that the whole, integrated, terrifyingly complete self can finally be born. But the heavy toll of awakening continues to mount, bringing us inevitably to the sixth and final price, which strips away the last remnants of the old world, the total loss of compensatory motivation. Once you have painstakingly integrated the dark shadow and successfully withdrawn your outward projections, the familiar noisy engine of your life simply stops running. You no longer want to be rich just to prove your worth to people who don't care about you. You no longer want to be desperately loved just to fill the gaping, bleeding hole of your childhood neglect. You no longer want to be powerful or successful just to mask your deep internal feelings of impotence and fear. All the frantic, exhausting reasons you previously had for doing anything at all are suddenly exposed as mere neuroses, frantic attempts to soothe an ego that is now dead. And so, a profound, heavy, paralyzing apathy may set in. This is the true dark night of the soul, a prolonged, agonizing period where absolutely nothing holds meaning, where the external world loses its vibrant luster completely, and where all human striving seems like a foolish, empty game. You will wander aimlessly through your days feeling like a hollow ghost, entirely disconnected from the frantic, stressful strivings of the sleeping people around you. You will have to wait, sometimes for long, agonizing years, in this barren, silent wasteland until a completely new, authentic source of motivation slowly arises from the mysterious depths of the self, not the demanding ego. This waiting is a supreme, agonizing test of human endurance. It is a terrifying, suffocating limbo where you must constantly fight and resist the overwhelming urge to regress into old, comfortable, destructive habits just to feel a fleeting spark of life again. You must sit alone with the profound deadness. You must patiently endure the severe psychological famine without reaching for junk food to numb the hunger. So, as you stand on the precipice of this terrifying journey, you must look deeply into your own eyes and ask yourself the hardest questions of your life. Are you truly prepared for this level of devastation? Are you absolutely willing to lose your comforting, lifelong stories? Are you willing to permanently surrender your righteous, intoxicating anger? Are you willing to be entirely abandoned and misunderstood by your tribe? Are you willing to plunge headfirst into the terrifying abyss of not knowing anything for certain? Are you willing to look directly at the monstrous, ugly face of your own shadow and call it your own? Are you willing to endure the painful death of your driving, lifelong ambitions? Are you willing to lose absolutely everything you currently think you are? Is the burning desire for absolute truth genuinely stronger than the desperate human desire for comfort? Will you courageously choose harsh integrity over shallow, fleeting happiness? Because the cold, hard truth of the matter is that staying asleep is a slow, suffocating, undignified death of the soul, a tragic life lived in a shallow, grey, meaningless illusion. But waking up is a fiery, agonizing, total destruction of the ego. There is no easy way out of the human predicament. The price of awakening is absolute and non-negotiable. You must pay for it with your life, not your physical life, but the entire psychological life you have so carefully and desperately constructed over the decades. You must willingly step into the roaring fire and let it burn away every single thing that is false, pretentious, and untrue. Only then, when there is absolutely nothing left but the charred, smoking ashes of your former identity, can the true, indestructible self finally emerge from the ruins. The choice is yours, and it is a heavy choice you must make entirely alone, in the quiet, terrifying, lonely depths of your own beating heart. Our guide, True Self-Discovery, offers 24 reflection exercises rooted in Jung's teachings, designed not to give you easy answers, but to help you sit with the hard questions that real awakening demands. The link is below if you're ready for that kind of work.